Welcome back, Kevin. And today we're going to be talking about building strong communities. The problem facing many in our audience is that their communities feel divided and it often feels hard to bring people together. Kevin, how does your work help unite communities?
Well, I shared a story about what we did at Shop LC with
Hmm.
our one for one program, and as you mentioned, it said, and that puts you on this path to Food Bridge. And I think that as you get older in your career, you start to think about going back to you should always revisit your why.
Hmm.
And I think my why became pretty apparent talking to folks like you and coaches I've had in my life and mentors. And by the way, if you don't have a mentor, this is for anyone, like you're doing yourself a disservice. Everyone should have a mentor in their life. And I think it was more about where do you want to spend the rest of your days? If you're really like in the twilight of your career and you're thinking about, business and how can you feel connected to what you're doing? And I think really, I didn't grow up from much. I grew up in a town of 400 people. Um, you know, uh, family was came from a divorced family, didn't have a lot of money. You know, remember eating government cheese, they used to call it back in the day, and all of that type of stuff. And so I think it was always in the back of my mind to say, you know, I remember how that felt.
Yeah.
And at some point in my career, I need to figure out how I'm going to make that difference, right? And so that the one for one program was a big boost for that. But from the food bridge side of things, I mean, we're building technology platforms. You talk about e-commerce, right, and AI and all the technology that's out there today, and think about how can I use that for good. We've seen lots of examples where AI is not used for good in our society today, and how can you create a connectedness with your community as an organization? And it was really one of our partners was touring with one of his clients who actually happened to run a donut shop.
Mm.
And they were going to a new opening, and it was in front of a Walmart. And he said, "Why on earth would you put a donut shop right in front of Walmart? Don't they sell donuts?" And he said, "Have you ever heard of Snap?" And he said, "Well, yeah." He says, I was actually on it when I was younger, and we're talking about the supplemental nutrition assistance program, right? So what people used to call food stamps.
Okay.
And he said, "Well, donuts are actually eligible for SNAP." And so we do this because people who don't spend all of their allotment because it's a use or lose program, right? If I get $500 in a month, and let's say I spent $380, I got $120 left in the month. I need to spend that because it's not carrying over to the next month. And that's where folks like 7-Eleven, Dollar General, donut shops, whatever, if they're part of the program and they found that loophole for it to
Mm.
be there, then neighbors who are on that program can use those benefits for food that isn't healthy, isn't nutritious, right? Probably not economical either. You're not
Right.
getting the most for your dollar. And it really, and he came back and we had a long conversation, the partners and I talking about there's something here that we got to figure out. This is this is insanity. We got to figure it out, right? How do we do what we're doing and try to remedy this issue? And so the more we dug in and more we started talking through it, um, you know, talking to food banks, talking to food pantries that are on this treadmill
Yeah.
constantly um, of raising donations. So I don't know if I mean, I've given time and money to charities and the folks in the past, and you think about it, and if you've done that regularly, you're probably going to get a call again next year to
Of
donate, right?
course.
Because
Right.
they
Yeah.
know you did
Every
it
year.
before.
Yeah.
And so it's that treadmill that I'm
Hmm.
on. And so we know when dips in economy like we have today and all that money starts to get scarcer.
Hmm.
And so if I don't have that, these food banks and pantries have to decide if they have to kill programs that have been successful in their community because they don't have enough money or funding to do it, or they want to start some new programs and they can't. They want to help some of their pantry partners to get more food, et cetera, and they can't because they're now since the pandemic that the increase in food spending for food banks and pantries has gone up like 4-5x, right? It's crazy. And
It really has.
yeah, and now with the changes like bills and things that have come out in legislation, that the states are going to be required to fund more of that. And the food banks and pantries were at a hunger summit recently in Indiana, and it really came out that they're hopeful, but they're scared. And so the program was developed to take our technology, which is how can a food bank or pantry control more of their own destiny,
Sure.
right? And we're not trying to turn them into profit centers or grocery stores. It's more about having a fund balance that they can repurpose back, because they're 501c3s. They got to
Mm-hmm.
do that, but repurpose it back into their communities, whether that's start a new farmer's market, buy a mobile food pantry truck, maybe provide cold food storage for food pantry partners, et cetera, so they can offer more than just canned goods or box goods. Um, and so that commerce platform engine, by being able to accept SNAP, helps the neighbor and the community, but also helps the food bank and the food pantry, because now they have a fund balance to work with. But at the same time, we all love it when a Target or a Walmart or something comes into our neighborhood, right? Or Costco, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it may be. But what that's done over time is all the little mom and pop grocery stores have gone away, right?
Yeah.
So the food deserts are actually growing,
That's interesting.
right? And so you think of urban markets where you have lack of
Mm-hmm.
transportation to get to a grocery store. SNAP doesn't cover things like delivery, so they can't do
Sure.
like you and I is just get it delivered to the front door, right? And they can't get transportation to go do buy online pickup in store, right? Unless they're going to take it on the bus or the train, like here where we are in Chicago, right? It's like public transportation they could use, but how are they going to do that for weeks worth of groceries for their
Mm-hmm.
family? And so food pantries and food banks happen to be in a lot of these food deserts, where they can actually help shrink that by offering those programs for them. Still offering free food, offering all the things that they do today, but now they have an opportunity to offer more if they want. Because they're the purpose of the mission
Mm-hmm.
of any hunger relief organization shouldn't be a handout. It should be a hand up,
Yeah.
right? Because the whole goal of those programs is to make sure that we can get them out of poverty. In fact, the average is about 100 to 150,000 people a year come out of poverty because of the result of being on those programs.
I love that. And I love how you said hand up,
Right.
because I think that's also growth, right? And
Yes.
it's an opportunity to take what situation we're in today
Mm-hmm.
and have the tools available to you to
Mm-hmm.
grow and step out of what you were in into
Mm-hmm.
something new.
Right.
Right. And so what a great life-giving element
Mm-hmm.
being, these food banks, the platform that you offer,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to these organizations to really help the population centers all around the U.S.
Right.
Have the ability to, every person faces different circumstances, but allow them one route out.
Right.
And so you're giving them a tool, you're equipping them, you're fueling them, literally fueling them
Right.
as individuals with healthy food choices, with healthy options locally,
Right.
which gives them the ability to keep their resources differently
Right.
to then help them grow into their next role, their next position, as a family, as an individual. It's a really neat program.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's not that the United States does not have access to food.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of access to food, but you can draw a map around your own community you live in and say, how many fast food places are there? How many donut
Mm-hmm.
shops? How many
Yeah.
things that are all around you? That's not nutritious food,
Right.
right? And the U.S. spent over $1 trillion last year on medical costs due to malnutrition.
Yeah. That's, I like eating healthy.
Yeah.
Personally, it gives you the energy you need and everything else.
Just makes you feel better,
it
right?
makes you-
Mentally.
Yeah. I mean, it takes away the brain fog, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have energy when you wake up every day. You
Mm-hmm.
have enough to sustain you through the day. You don't have these spikes,
Right.
up and downs throughout the day with it. And
think
so-
about kids struggling with hunger, right? They can't concentrate on their schoolwork
right.
because they're thinking about where am I going to get my next meal?
Yeah. And, and that's scary. Kids shouldn't have to think about that, right?
Exactly. Especially here,
yeah.
right?
They shouldn't have
Yeah.
to think about that.
But it's, tying it back, Eric, to, the original question is just that building something that is the community. One of the things I talk about when I work with companies and organizations about creating their balanced scorecard. The
Mm.
balanced scorecard isn't just about the OKRs we talked about before.
Yep.
It's like I like to divide it up and say there's a customer aspect to this. So, customer acquisition, customer retention, loyalty,
Mm-hmm.
all of those types of things. Then there's the shareholder part of that, which is all what we all think about, right? It's revenue, it's margin, profitability, et cetera, the cost controls. But then the other part of that is also the employee experience,
Mm-hmm.
going back to connecting, having a place that I feel like I'm connected to working. So those things about, employee retention, right,
Yes.
engagement. But the last one, which a lot of people miss, is that sustainability or connection to your community.
Mm-hmm.
What are the KPIs that you're going to measure about how you're giving back to your community or creating something that is sustainable, whether it's a green energy initiative, whether it's, we're going to start some kind of charity or grant program, right? Or, donating meals, right? Or donating time. But those need to be measured just as importantly as all those other OKRs.
Absolutely, 100%. And you think about it, as a food bank operating in those communities, having something to give like that,
Hmm.
you're not only giving food anymore, but you're also giving hope.
Well, what happens is, it's funny that you mention that because I think the eye opener for both the pantries and food banks when you're on site. We were actually at a food pantry in North Carolina recently, and we were talking about where the neighbors go for their food, and they happen to be right next to a general
Mm.
dollar type store.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and they called out the managing director of the pantry said, these people come in our food pantry all the time for food, and they're hanging out over there. And I said, yeah, because if now imagine they have SNAP benefits,
Mm-hmm.
they're taking it over there. What do you think the value they're getting for the food from there? A $3 bottle of orange juice that's like this big, right? Or any other food that's not nutritious, where they could be coming here where all you have is nutritious food and providing that, right? And so it's not that you're taking them away from what they're doing there. And she also shared with us that if they come in for food, the thing that we want to do is be able to also talk to them about
Mm-hmm.
all of the wraparound services that we can provide: housing, careers, right? Medical, like whatever it may be, mental health services. Um, and so that's where the conversational AI comes in, is to say, but what about the neighbors who aren't walking through your door?
That's right. Yep.
You're not getting to them. You're not telling them all the things that are possible. And with a two-way conversation that I can have at scale
Mm-hmm.
with a neighbor who is giving me that information versus me prying it out of them,
Yes.
right? Now I know down to a zip code where is the most need. So therefore, if I'm deciding where I'm going to put my next mobile food pantry or farmer's market, or I have a pantry partner who just doesn't have enough food to give them, I can see where the need is. Or I can share that with some of my agencies in the state or local community that are providing free Medicare coverage, right? Or mental health services or housing or those types of things. And I can do that now without waiting for them to walk through my door.
And that's really neat, Kevin. Food Bridge is really taking a holistic approach and
Mhm.
not only carrying the issue of hunger in these local communities, but really loving the people well and
Mhm.
providing so much more than just food.
Mhm.
As food is the product that fuels, but it's the love and the care
Mhm.
that you're providing that's really holistically wrapping your arms around every individual,
Right.
and creating the opportunity for them to grow,
Yeah.
in the environments that they're in today. That's really neat. Food Bridge is such an incredible organization, and they couldn't have a better leader than you in
Well,
it.
I'm not alone, and we're certainly excited. But I have all the admiration in the world for these people who run food banks and food pantries, the things that they have to deal with every day. And I obviously have a big heart for our food insecure neighbors. I mean, there are 42 million people were on SNAP
Wow.
in 2023. And so that's not going away, right? It's going to continue to rise. And there's a lot of people who should be on SNAP that aren't. There's people that, through the pandemic, et cetera, who are on SNAP that probably shouldn't be. And again, these are things like the technology can bring, is to help you not only get to more people that need it, but also weed out the people who don't, right? Because you want to provide that funding and the mechanisms to help people who actually need it. and that gives us the opportunity to do that, right? And be on a secure platform, right? Those types of things. And it's also led to like what's next for me, like
Mm-hmm.
what other things can I do to provide to the community, right? So one of the things I'm working on right now is, how do we take a lot of this old commercial real estate, the abandoned commercial real estate, where I live in northern Colorado. We recently had a shooting at a mall. It was a couple people. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a mass shooting, but it was a couple people died, unfortunately. And I think about all of those spaces that are getting underused right now, and when they're underused and neglected, people will take advantage of
Oh,
that, right?
sure.
For
Mm-hmm.
things, nefarious things.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how can we convert a lot of those spaces into something that does good? Because if you do that, the less likely that those types of activities are going to happen. So, converting, old real estate into community centers that actually can bring good, right? Things like teaching kitchens, like a garden center, like, urban grow centers, right?
Yeah.
To control teaching clinics, a pantry, like all of those things under one roof in a community that needs it the most. And then, I mean, what's going to happen to that real estate if it doesn't get used?
Right. And that's a great vision to have, these untapped buildings that, are underutilized
Hmm.
today, where you're bringing a new vision, igniting a new environment for them.
Hmm.
That's really great. Kevin, thanks for joining us on this show.
Hmm.
We're so grateful to hear the story and your vision of what you do in your organization, and just the passion that you have for it. Gosh, those food deserts should be
Hmm.
grateful to have you leading the charge with Food Bridge, because you have a system that is going to bring great change, and it is.
I don't like this work. I love this work.
Yeah, that's awesome, Kevin. Thank you.